So with our handsome Mr. W, I know we were just discussing, when he gets very excitable, one of my favorite things is to make sure that we're also including dog-centric play and outlets. So a lot of dogs were bred for a purpose. So this doesn't mean that, for example, my boy Bill, who's a heeler mix, is going to all of a sudden have a flock or, a herd of cattle or something to go in and do his usual herding behaviors. But remember that for a lot of puppies, if a lot of times we're not enriching them mentally and physically with some of the drives that make dogs feel fulfilled and happy, then we might be getting a lot of behavior that's exaggerated because of the lack of outlets. So I'm not saying that, for example, your puppy is doing poorly just because we're not giving them, again, playtime or exploration. Those are all wonderful venues. But remember that a lot of times behavior that we've deemed sometimes not our favorite, so barking or chasing and digging and grabbing, and even sometimes catching and gutting an animal, have sometimes been behaviors that we're not a huge fan of. The problem, though, is not giving your puppy outlets that are dog-centric is a lot of times then behaviors that were natural to them get exaggerated and then become problematic for both us and the pups. So this is what's called a flirt pole. So like to flirt and then a pole. And you can see that Mr. W is a huge fan. So the benefit of a toy like this is you can get your puppy to expend some healthy energy, but always do it safely. So what I mean by that, some really good important safety rules for flirt poles is do them outside and in an environment that has traction. So what I mean by that is if it's icy and slippery, we do not want a puppy or an adult dog to play in that environment because of the fact that they could slip and then tweak something or pull something or hurt themselves. So you'll see with Mr. W, I keep also the flirt pole lure to the floor. So I'm not saying that as they get more advanced, like with one of my boys, I do lift it up in the air and he goes flying through the air and lands really nicely. But he's had a lot of practice playing with the toy and then properly knowing how to use his body. So for some puppies, and sometimes my little sheepskin does shed a little bit, but for some puppies, they, again, don't really know they have a front or a back end to their body. So you'll see that when I'm playing, I have low and long swooshing motions. So I'm not quickly changing the direction or having my puppy quickly leap or change suddenly because I don't want him to injure himself. Remember that a lot of times allowing your puppy to chase, grab, shake, and bite on items they're allowed to have means that you're giving an outlet that's appropriate for the puppy to do. So that way you're not having this explosion of energy onto you or friends or even inanimate objects in the home. So remember, I'm not saying that a puppy should be so tired that they can't function, because remember, a tired dog is not necessarily a well-behaved dog. So just look at us. If we were overtired and really exhausted, we may not be the happiest people because we're so fatigued because our supply has been depleted. So you want to do a little bit of a happy middle where you're doing some physical activity, but pairing that with also some thinking or some pausing. Because if, let's say, we only did fetching or we did high intensity play that didn't have much for thought process behind it, you're either, one, going to create over arousal issues in your puppy where they're going to very quickly go from 0 to 100 and then need more and more and more physical energy expending through exercise or through rapid play. And the problem there is you might create a physical athlete you'll never be able to keep up with. So I like to make sure that, yes, I love to expend my puppy's energy and even my adult dogs, but I make sure that they're also using their brain and their body. So view it like Chuck E. Cheese versus soccer camp. Soccer camp, you are playing and you're having a great time, but you're also learning skills. You're taking breaks and taking a moment to not be playing the whole time. Where Chuck E. Cheese or something similar is a little bit of just chaos and just a lot of fun, but not too much for thinking. So notice, so again, with Mr. W, he really loves going and chasing the flirt pole. You want to make sure that for any time you're playing something new with your puppy, don't do it so long that either it turns into a chore, but also don't do it so long that you could cause lameness. So if your puppy has never Okay, I'll be right there. So if your puppy, for example, has never done the flirt pull, I maybe only play for a few minutes at a time. Make sure there's little rest periods or check-ins, and then gauge how comfortable or how tired the puppy's getting. So because remember, for every month that he is old, give or take, you could do about 15 minutes of practice or working with him or activity. This does not mean that you have to limit his physical activities, but remember that if he is getting overstimulated or overtired, you may think, oh, he needs more energy expending things. A lot of times what we do by accident, we take a puppy that has a lot of oomph and we feed into it by giving them more and more and more physical activities. And then we create a puppy that doesn't quite have an off switch. So you might actually be, for example, driving the car until you're running out of fuel, as opposed to driving the car and at times putting it into park or even shutting it off and then sometimes starting it up again. So you don't want to keep going until you're out of fuel, but practice putting the brakes on and then putting the gas back on. Because if it's always go, 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 your puppy might expect that is going to be their life all the time. And then when moments you can't do those things, your puppy has expectations. And then sadly, if those expectations or those needs are not met the exact same way, then at times your puppy can have a rougher day than usual. So I like to sometimes rotate through having days where we do lots of little goodies. Other days we'll work on more settling and relaxation. And you might rotate through that even throughout the whole day. But you can see the flirt pull is definitely a nice option for Mr. Handsome to work a bit through that on-off switch and chase and then take a little breather. And as he gets more comfortable, you'd then practice dropping the toy, get him to take a little break, maybe do a little check-in. Nice. So right there's my little positive interrupter where I want him to do a little check-in. He says he doesn't know if he likes those snacks as much. And then we'll give him a little break from the flirt pull, but we're going to work a few more skills in just a moment. He's like, oh, I'd like to bring this one home.